So hi, welcome to the GPS, Great Public Schools Network, Planning a Flipped Lesson from Beginning to End. My name is Brandy Bixler, and I will be doing the presentation today. I'm an ed tech specialist for Aurora Public Schools. I teach technology classes, and I also work with teachers and help them implement technology in their classrooms. My group in the Great Public Schools Network is the Flipped Lesson Group, so if you haven't joined that group, you might want to go check it out. So I wanted to start out today just by defining what a flipped classroom is and what flipped learning is. So flipped learning is a blended learning model where the teacher takes all or part of her whole group lesson and turns it into a video lesson that the students can do from home. There's lots of different ways to do this. You can add an activity to go along with it, but the main purpose for this is to allow for more time in class that can be spent on collaboration, discourse, or just even give the teacher more time for small groups in their classroom. So some of the reasons you might want to flip your classroom are that it does improve grades. Students are able to watch the videos over and over if they need to. They can pause, they can take notes. It really puts the learning in their own hands. The homework is meaningful and it prepares them for what's going to happen in the classroom. There's just more of that classroom to homework connection. And then the biggest benefit is that as a teacher, you get more time for collaboration and discourse in your classroom because you're not taking that 15 minutes before your lesson to launch and demonstrate, and you get that 15 or more minutes to do more meaningful, high-level work with your students. Students can always go back and revisit the lessons if they need to, especially if you're a second language learner. Maybe you need to slow it down a little bit, watch it a couple times. If you were absent one day, you can go and you can review the lessons. And another benefit is that it helps support a paperless classroom, so you don't have to make all those copies of homework to pass out every night. And it also, you know, for grading and management, is so much easier to handle than, you know, 5 pages of homework per kid every week. So for me, when I think about planning a flipped lesson, or any lesson for that matter, the one thing I think of when I start is what's the big picture, what are the big ideas, what do the students need to learn for the lesson, and that's your lesson in the classroom. It's usually standards-based. And then after you've determined that lesson or what idea that you want to flip, then you really need to think about what are you going to flip. What would you normally do at the beginning of your lesson? Would you demonstrate? Would you tap into prior knowledge? What do you do to engage or to launch your lessons? What can you have students do at home to prepare them to be ready to get busy with the classwork when they get to school the next day? So I've done a sample lesson that I'm actually working on with my kids this week on, and the big ideas that I'm working on, and I'm a computer lab teacher, and I'm connecting to the affective needs of kids that we do it as a whole school. So the affective needs that we're doing this week is respect. So I want students to identify the traits that they respect in a person and they admire. And then as the technology outcome, I really want them to think about what a respectful digital footprint would look like. So if you're putting something on the web and you're somebody who's somebody's hero, what type of information would you find about them on the web? What would their post look like? And then they're going to actually create a fake Facebook page for that person they admire in my class. So before they get to class, I want them to be thinking about 3 people that they admire, 3 famous people that they admire. And then I also want them to sign up for a Canva account. This was for my fourth graders. With my third graders, I did a little different, but my fourth graders, I wanted to sign up for a Canva account before they came to class, so they're not spending all of their time signing up and getting an account for a program I want them to use. And I'm going to launch my lesson with engaging them with a Surf's Up video. It's a little clip on hero worship. And I'm also going to have them watch a screencast on how to add an image to a Google presentation, because that's a technology skill that I want them to learn. So after I've decided my objectives and my big ideas for the lesson, the next step for me is deciding on what technology I'm going to use to really organize and present my lessons. And this is upfront work that you should do before you flip your classroom, just to save you so much time. And once you have those structures in place and systems in place, you can do your flipped lessons relatively quickly. So the first technology that you need to really be thinking about is, what kind of organizational tool are you going to use? How are you going to organize your lessons so students can access them easily and find what they need and navigate to them from home? Another important tool is some sort of screencasting tool where you can actually create lessons for your students. And a screencast tool is a tool that videotapes your computer screen while you talk. You'll also want to think about some video resources that are already made. Khan Academy is a good place to go for these. If it's a math concept, you don't have to make every single video. You have students watch at home. You can use ones that other people have done. And then I like to add a Web 2.0 tool at the end of the video, just for accountability. So I might give them a little quiz. I might do a shared document where they have to collaborate on something together, or it might just be as simple as take notes and be prepared to share your thinking when you come to class. So some of my favorite tools for organization are Weebly. I use Weebly. It's a website, free website I create. I like using a website because I'm pretty tech savvy, and websites for me give me a lot of flexibility with how I want to organize it and what I want to put on. They are a little bit higher maintenance than some other learning management sites like Edmodo and Schoology. The learning management sites look a little bit like a Facebook page, but you're going to put your lessons up there. The thing I don't like about the learning management sites is that we post something, and just like Facebook, it starts to move down the list. So they can be harder to organize unless you use the folder systems. And Schoology is kind of the whole package. If you use Schoology, you're going to have, you know, a place to house your resources and a folder system. We actually use that for our online and blended classes in our school district. Another tool you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get familiar with YouTube and create a YouTube channel and playlist within the YouTube channel. This is where you'll house the videos that you make, and YouTube is a very simple tool to use, but it does take some time just to figure out the terminology and where things are stored. Another tool you could use if you wanted to go super simple would be a Facebook page. You can make a Facebook page for your students, and you can just post your homework on the Facebook page and put it out there, and they can watch it that night. Their parents can see it and share it. I know people have had a lot of success with using Facebook as a classroom, you know, resource tool. So after you've considered the technology that you want to use, you're going to want to think about creating the lesson. So you can either go with a screencasting lesson, or you can do a video that you find somewhere. So the benefits of doing screencasting are it's more personal and it's more customized. When students hear your voice or see your face on the computer screen, it's like they're taking you home with them, and you're making that personal connection with them, and they tend to feel more accountable to you as a person when you make your own videos than if you tell them to watch a video on YouTube or Discovery Education. However, you know, putting those videos on there for them to watch saves you some time. It's much easier to go out and find a pre-made video and assign that. And they're also very professional looking and well made, and there's not a lot of glitches in them, where if you're making screencasting videos often, they're not going to be perfect, and you kind of have to just be okay with that, or you're going to spend all your time doing your videos. So my favorite screencast tools, my favorite one personally is Screencastify. It's a Google Chrome extension. So if you use Google Chrome as your browser and you use Google Docs, Screencastify is so easy. There's a little icon in the corner. You click it, it records your screen, and you can upload it automatically to your YouTube account. And that's what I've used. Screencast-O-Matic is one that gets really good reviews for being easy to use and very, very teacher-friendly. And Screen Toaster is another one that's very easy to use. All three of these are web-based tools. Screencast-O-Matic does have one you can download onto your computer. Other ones you can use, Jing is one people use. Camtasia is one you pay for. If you have a Mac, QuickTime makes it really easy to create a video. To me, it's just not as smooth to upload to YouTube as using Screencastify or even Screencast-O-Matic. That one's pretty easy to upload to YouTube also. If you decide to use a video resource along with your screencast or instead of your screencast, YouTube has great stuff that teachers have done and shared and made public that may fit your lesson. Discovery Education, if your school district pays for Discovery Education, there's some really great resources on there. And the thing I like about Discovery Education is it's really easy just to pull a 10-minute clip out rather than a full-length video. Watch Know Learn is a site that's very organized. It takes you out to other sites, but it's organized by subject, by standard. The Futures channel, if you're a math teacher, I really like the Futures channel because it's videos about careers with a math lesson within them. A lot of it is free, but now they've gone to a paid subscription model, so many of the videos are now you have to pay for the subscription to get, but it's worth checking out if you're a math teacher. Wing Clips is one I just found, and it had lots of videos organized more by affective needs like responsibility and respect. It's a great website for character education or online safety. It does have a religious bent to it, so you'll have to make sure you filter it out so it's appropriate. You're not putting anything that's not appropriate for your school. All of these resources that I've talked about so far are housed on the Great Public Schools network in my Flipped Learning group on the resource tab. So if you go and check out that site, you'll just find folders of collections with all of these resources in them. If you don't do that, you can just Google them. They're all fairly easy to find on the internet. So after I've created my video or found a video that I want students to watch, the next thing I plan is just kind of a check for understanding. I want to add some accountability for the students to actually watch the lessons. I want to know if they're understanding them or not. I want to know who needs help when they come to my room. So you can give like a short quiz, an assignment, or a prompt for them to respond to. And if you're doing that on Facebook or Edmodo, they can do it right there on the page. You have your video. You can also do a blog where they post their assignments. You can do a Socrative quiz. You can do anything really. You can have them bring something to school that represents what they watched. It just really depends on what you want them prepared to do when they get to class. So some of my favorite tools for checking for understanding and building that accountability are Socrative, Google Forms, Twitter, Padlet, and just a blog. So Socrative is a site where you can make quizzes for students or open-ended questions for students. If you run it live, it shows your live scores. It's a really, really good website. It's easy to use. It's great for formative assessment. Google Forms are very, very easy to make. They're easy to embed in almost anything you do. You just make the form with the questions and you send a link to the kids. That's actually what I used for my lesson. Making a classroom Twitter account, they can just tweet out their responses to their prompt, to a prompt. Twitter's fun, but if they're under 13, there might be some liability issues there with having your students actually make their own Twitter account. Padlet is a website that has sticky notes, and it's collaborative, and it's students click on the wall and they make a sticky note that is a response, or they can put a link or a recording or a picture or anything they want on that sticky note. So you'll have a collection of sticky notes on a wall that's all done online. And just making a blog place on your website is also a great place. I like the ones that the students can actually see each other's responses, because if they're not understanding it, maybe they can go back and look and read what other kids have said, and it might help them make some connections of their own. It's also a place where they can ask questions of each other, you know, during homework time, and let them collaborate that way. These are all in the resource folder in the Great Public Schools Flipped Classroom site. So check it out. So I'm going to show you now kind of a sample of how I've gone through this process and put it all together into a lesson that's ready for my students to use. So for my organizational tool, I'm using a website, and that's set up as a blog. So I'm just starting Flipping My Classroom this week. It's only maybe the 5th or 6th week of school for me in a new building, so I'm a little slow to get started this week. So when I post something, it will go down every week, and the newest one will be on the top. I use Screencastify to show them how to add an image to a Google presentation, and I used a wing clip called Surf's Up to show them an example of respect and hero worship. And then the Web 2.0 tool I chose to use was a Google form, where they're going to get ready to have a quick discussion in the classroom, and they'll also have 3 people that they've already considered that they respect, so they won't have to spend their time trying to think of somebody they respect and honor. They'll be ready to start the project when they get to my classroom. And I'm going to have to click off of this to show you that website, so I'm going to do that right now. So if it goes off for a second, I'll be right back. So this is the website that I've created with all of those resources on it. You can see that I have the week listed on it, then I put my learning targets for the students so they know what it is that's expected of them. And I also wanted to be really clear on what they need to actually do. So they're going to sign up for a Canva account, and again, I have 2 different lessons going here. This one's for my 4th graders. My 3rd graders actually made a PowerPoint when they got into class. They're just going to identify really quickly 3 people that they admire and respect. So this is the clip that I pulled off of Wing Clips. It's a little thing from Surf's Up, and I did that by embedding the the HTML code into my Weebly site. This is a Weebly site that I've made. Weebly's very easy to use. I just drag over a little HTML box, click on it, and paste the code, and it shows up. So the kids would watch this. It's only a few minutes long. I'll show you a quick example of it. So that video goes on for about 2 minutes, and that gives them a an idea of how this penguin worships the first surfer, and talks about how much he respected him. Then I went ahead and I made a screencast for them. My students are having a lot of trouble putting a video or putting an image onto their Google Docs or their Google presentations. So I did a really quick example, and this is an example from their Facebook page that they need to make when they get to class. Hi, today I'm going to show you how to insert an image into a Google presentation so that you can complete your Facebook Hero project. So in order to insert an image into Google presentation, the first thing you're going to do is find an image that you like. So that's also about 2.5 minutes long, and it just goes to show them how they can do an image into their Google Doc. I also have this site available for them when they get back to class and they start working. They can go back and review this video, so I don't have to help 20 kids all at one time on the same thing. And then I made a Google form, and the Google form actually just looks like this. Who do you admire? And then I just had them list person 1, give 2 to 3 reasons why you admire them, person 2, and person 3. And then they click submit, and then I get a spreadsheet with all of their responses on it. This helps me because when I get to class and they're like, I don't know who I respect, I don't know who I admire, I don't remember, I can go back to my spreadsheet and I can say, oh, remember you said these 3 people, let's choose one of those. It also, makes them accountable for doing the homework, and it gives me kind of good information when I get to, school in the morning. I can look at that spreadsheet really quick, and if there's something I need to have a heads up about, maybe they're not picking appropriate people to respect, maybe that's something I need to address before they get to work also. So that's what my site looks like. So next week I'll have week of 9/15, and I'll have the post up there, and it'll be probably the same exact format. I'm going to keep this structure all year long. I think it's very important to keep the structure and the systems similar throughout the year, and this seems to work for me. So I'm going to go back to my presentation now. So after I've really talked about, that the homework piece, what they're doing at home, now when they get to class, I don't have to demonstrate how to do an image. I don't have to do any background about respect or have them think about who they might have to worship as a hero for their project. They'll have all that information in their head, and they'll just be ready to come in. We'll do a quick go round of, oh, what are some ideas you got from the homework? Who do you respect? What are you going to do today? Do you have any questions? And then we'll jump right on the computers, and they'll be able to work on their classroom activity. And that really gives me another 15 minutes at least in my 50-minute block of time, which is significant for me. So another thing I use is Google Classroom. It's new. I have that out, and I've been using it for them to turn stuff in and give stuff to students. So I'm having them use their Google Classroom to post their work, and then they can comment on them when they finish. So this is what my day would look like in the class for this particular assignment. All right, so that's basically how I start my flipped lesson from beginning to end. It's how I think about the big ideas and what I'm going to use and the tools I'm going to use. I hope you have some good ideas to walk away with. Again, if you join the GPS network and the Flipped Learning group, you will see the resource library, and I will show you that before we go today. But I did want to give you some tips for, keeping your flip from flopping. And the first one is join a professional learning community. The GPS network is a great place to start. Google Plus has groups that are just specifically for flipped learning also. They're also wonderful resources. You also want to make sure you get buy-in from students and parents and administrators before you get started, because you don't want misunderstandings to interfere with the success of your flipping. Parents might not understand why you're having kids watch videos at home instead of doing math fact worksheets. Administrators, of course, don't want to get phone calls from those parents, so you want to give them a heads up too. And students might not understand it either, especially if they're a little older. They might have opinions about it, so you want to make sure you sell it to them too. And then the biggest tip to me is probably just stay organized. You're going to end up with a lot of videos and a lot of lessons, and a lot of these things you're going to want to reuse next year, or even for another lesson in the following year. I might want to pull that how to add an image one back up again if we need to review it later on or next quarter when I have another group of kids. So you want to make sure you keep your videos organized. I suggest doing that in YouTube. Keep your website organized. Keep any quizzes you make organized. Just develop a system of organization. And if you don't know where to start with that kind of organization, I would recommend going with Schoology, because Schoology has a preset organizational system for you. And if you log onto Schoology, there are all kinds of tutorials on there for you to watch and get started, and they're very, very good about helping you when you email them and ask them for help. So let me show you the Great Public Schools site and the Flipped Learning group where to find the resources. So I'm going to switch screens here. Oops, that did not work. Let me stop. Let me do it this way. I'm just going to go, I think it's here. That's the form I made. All right, so now I lost my window because I have too much going on. All right, I found it. There we go. So here's the Great Public Schools Network Flipped Classroom group. So when you join the GPS network, you'll want to search for the Flipped Classroom group. This is the home page of what that looks like. So if you go down to the groups, you'll see all these groups you can join. These are the featured groups. And you can go down in the Collaborate button, and you'll see them listed by topic. So the technology ones are, I think, down here. It's right here, the Flip Classroom group, so you click on that. You'll join it. It's pretty easy to join. You just have to put a little bit of information in. It does ask you for a little bio, but you don't have to put any more than a sentence or two in there. I'm going to just log in. You'll log in, and then you have to close this window. But once you're in, you'll see my home page, which just tells you how to use the group. There's the resource tab is right here. And under the resource tab, you'll see all these different topics. So I was talking about using learning management systems. So here's a folder for learning management systems, and I have some resources in there for, you know, Beginner's Guide for Schoology is one of them that's in there. You can go back to the resource page by clicking on the Flip Classroom. There's some tools for assessments if you wanted to look up Socrative and some of those other tools. And if you join this group and you have resources you want to add, I would love to have other people add their resources here too. So here's information on some of the resources that I use in my room for assessment. If you go back to the main page, you can also join the discussion groups, and this is something that's been relatively slow to start up, but I would love to have people's thoughts and comments, and it's a great place to ask questions. If you post a question in here, I'll get back to you for sure, but other people in the group who are doing flipped learning in other ways may get back to you also on this. So joining a discussion is another way to get support for this. Those are the two main tabs that you'll want to look at when you join that. So let me go back to my presentation. So if you have any questions, now is a good time just to post them in the chat on the side, and I can answer questions that you have, or post them in the GPS Flipped Learning site, and I'll get back to you on those too. So that's all I have for today, so thank you so much for joining. Again, my name is Brandy Bixler. You can find me on Pinterest. I have a lot of stuff on Pinterest, or you can find me on Twitter. I also have a lot on Twitter and Google+. I use for my professional stuff. And thanks again for coming.